Marta Codina is a Cuban-American banking executive. She's newly retired. She was born in Cuba and came to the U.S. as a refugee in the early 1960s. She began working in banking as a teller during high school in Houston, Texas. Fun. Eventually, she served as Senior Vice President, Branch Customer Experience of the U.S., overseeing strategic customer experiences across the entire U.S. branches. Page 2, here we go. Oh my gosh. Marta is passionate about leadership development and diversity, equity, inclusion. She lives in Iowa with her beautiful husband, Jim Bruno. She has children, Maddie and Nicholas, and grandchildren, Jet and Dash.
Okay, I have massive imposter syndrome, so this is really humbling for me. So let me just start off by saying that. So there's several of you in the room that probably know my story as well as I do. So Steve, I'm looking at you, Marcia. So if I get any parts wrong, just jump on in and help me. But I'm just get super excited to be here. I do have to tell you, I retired from Wells Fargo. May 16th was my last day. And when you retire from Wells Fargo, you're literally cut off that afternoon, and it's like your whole world just ended. It's really weird, even though I knew it was coming. So I'm 2 months into retirement, and I'm loving every second. And I've been on 5 trips since then, and more to come. But I keep stressing that I'm going to get bored. So, and again, don't all of you approach me about volunteer opportunities, but I am game, and I definitely want to get even more involved than I currently am. So this is my first chat outside of my corporate life. So you're my guinea pigs. I'm not sure if anyone else will ever hear this, but I was asked to share my story, so I'm going to do my best. I have to tell you, Catherine, when you said send me a PowerPoint, I was like, oh crap. I don't have PowerPoint anymore because I left all that behind. But guess what? I figured out, I got a new laptop, I downloaded PowerPoint, and I did this on my own. So anyway, so I thought what I would do, again, some of you know me, those of you that know me or know a little, well, you heard a little bit about my background, but there are a lot of layers to my story. So I thought I would give you a little bit of that. You heard the term refugee, which incites a lot of interesting thoughts these days in our current environment, but I'm the outcome of a lot of great resources and great support throughout my life. And I just want to share a little bit about that with you. I will tell you, I've worked, by the time I retired, I think I was in 46 years. I started as a teller at age 16 in Houston. And I worked almost 47 years straight without ever being unemployed or being between jobs or ever being displaced, which is kind of crazy. So I am decompressing right now. I did a pottery class last night. I'm painting. I'm just trying to use the other side of my brain. So I've had a very long professional career that has had a lot of different layers in it. Started in 1978, so I think I could be the oldest in the room. But you can imagine, again, some of the, I may be close, I don't know, a few of you might be close with me. All right, okay. So, we've seen some things and survived some things over the years that, have definitely shaped why I do things the way I do today, or why I've chosen not to do certain things throughout my career. And then, again, whether it's wisdom, this is very daunting, by the way, visionary legacy. Like, whoa. But I'll share some of the little, tidbits that I have that I've shared throughout my leadership journey with you. So are we ready? Okay, so Catherine mentioned Cuban refugee. Okay, so what do you think about when you think about refugees today? Displacement, right? Living in fear. Oh, well, displacement, and my purpose now as I am in this new chapter is to try to be an image of what could be in the future. This was, again, I had to pull out some old pictures, Steve, so this was kind of fun. So this is pre-me. I was not in the picture at this time. My parents were married 18 years before I was born, and I'm an only child, so definitely I was a surprise. And I was born into the revolution, but this is pre-communism and pre-me. So look at how dressed up they got on a Saturday night. Okay, definitely, living a good life, right? My dad had his PhD, but he decided to have a Chevy dealership in Cuba, so he's a businessman, living a great life. Okay, all of a sudden, communism and Castro come in. Everyone thought he was a savior because he was going to change the country from a corrupt leader. which was Batista, and their lives changed overnight. Castro came in kind of proposing something that, again, ended up not being true. So life was good in Cuba. Okay, my parents were having a blast. Then I get born into the Castro regime. Why do I show this picture to you? Okay, this is a very typical picture of a baby. Notice my ears pierced. Wearing a gold chain already. But it's very typical. My mom used to say they pierced babies' ears back then before they left the hospital. So it's not like you go to Claire's, when you're 6. It's like, no, it's a done thing. But again, these pictures are treasures to me because when we left Cuba, you only could come out with 3 changes of clothing as a refugee and a dime. So the fact that we have these photos, my husband laughs because it gives me grief because I pull out my baby album every now and then, and it's like, okay, but this is like a treasure. So anyway, and then why is the picture of me in here with the crib? There's a story about that crib. So imagine, okay, just imagine, in Cuba what happened is one day you're wealthy, okay, the next day, or whatever, it could have been a couple of weeks after the Castro regime, all of a sudden he changes the currency. So you're a millionaire one day, and the next day you have nothing because the currency is different. So all of the things that you had, all of a sudden now go away. My dad was astute enough, and he was very educated, and he'd actually studied socialism early in his life, and said, we need to get out. I was just born, and he said, if our daughter is going to have a future, we need to get out of this country. So he applied for political asylum. We were one of the first groups of Cubans to leave. And I'll share some of those photos with you, but we were one of the first groups to leave. So in exchange for that, you had to, basically everything you owned now became property of the government until the government said you could leave. I was actually born a month early because my mom's OB got his permission to leave early, and they said, you're going to deliver now. So, that's how crazy it was. So you didn't know. So what they would do is they'd come in and take an inventory of your home, and everything that you had was government property. So that crib that you see there, it's kind of cool, right? It has a little enclosure on it. I forget what they called it. There's a Spanish term for it. I can't remember, but it was a very fancy crib, right? There's a future picture that I didn't put in here, but one of the future pictures shows me in this little wooden crib because one of the government officials' wife had a baby, and they said, oh, there's this fancy crib. We'll go get it. So I just rip it out from under you. So then my mom always told the story, or my dad did, that my dad came home from work from the dealership early, and he just sat down, and my mom said, what are you doing here? He said, well, they came in and took the shop today. Oh. So that's it, it's gone. Oh. So that became government property, right? They wanted it. So all your assets, your property, everything. So then they come into your home, and you don't know when it's going to happen. It took my parents over a year. So think about living over a year, not knowing when you're going to get permission to leave. And then they give you a day's notice. So they come in, do an inventory on your home. My mom used to tell the story that if you had a coffee cup and it broke or it shattered or glass, you better keep it, because they would use that as a reason to say you're not going. So everything had to be intact, and then you were able to leave. So here I go. Again, I'm roughly 2.5, and we finally get to leave. People used to sew like jewelry, because jewelry still had value, like into the hems of their clothes. They would swallow it. Okay, just crazy. I have a bear, which I didn't bring. You've seen my osito, haven't you? So I had a little bear that I usually had brought before to work, but he's this ragged little teddy bear, and they let me out with Osito because they felt sorry for this 2-year-old with this little bear. So I still have him, and he's pretty cool. But anyway, so that is, that's what brought us in. These are some pictures. Again, you can see we flew. I get asked a lot, did you come over on a raft? Did you swim? I'm like, no, we came on a plane. But this is me, again, coming in. There I am. That's my aunt, by the way. And then here's a pretty cool story. So that's my first time in the news. I don't know if you've seen this, Steve. But here's where I want to talk about programs and resources. And Catherine, you mentioned connections. And this is where all of the things that we do in our community for people matter. So my dad comes into Miami. We all went into Miami. Have you been to Miami? Okay, there's a place called Freedom Tower. That's where all the refugees went. We got, baby formula, government cheese, Spam, all that good stuff. If it weren't for that, wouldn't be here. So then, in Emporia, Kansas, there was a dean of a college there, Emporia State College, that had this vision. He goes, there are all these Cuban men, mind you, that are coming in with higher education degrees, and we need to figure out how to leverage them or how to support them. So he's in the middle of the country, right, in Kansas, in Emporia. And my dad was selected to be one of the 12 Cuban professionals. Again, they're all men, mind you. There was no women professional at the time. This would have been in 65-ish. 13 Cuban refugees, including a member of the Cuban Supreme Court, arrived yesterday to start a new life in Emporia, Kansas. As Cubans stepped from Delta Airlines plane, most of them grimaced at the risk of the February wind. Just imagine that. Okay, they were told it was mild. A group of 30 refugees arrived. There'll be more coming. So here's what I thought was interesting. Dr. Morell, who left Cuba because he said it was impossible to administer justice under Castro, said communism was winning in Latin America, and the United States and other nations of the hemisphere must fight to spread where they choose, not where the communists choose. So again, the reason we were able to come here was simply because we were political refugees. Okay, so this program at Kansas State Teachers College allowed my dad to be able to get his equivalency on his doctorate degree and be able to teach in the U.S. Okay, now he was by this time, 54-year-old man with, he spoke English, but broken English. My mother never had spoken English until the day she died 15 years ago, did not speak English. And by the way, my family calls me Adriana, not Marta, because my mom's name was Marta, so it says Adriana Codina, but that's me, all bundled up. So it's interesting in our culture because the other families that were part of this program, we all lived in student housing, and they're my family now. So who I refer to as my cousin, who's like a sister to me, we met them through here. So when we're, again, lifting up programs, in our community, and Mary, I'm looking at you, the difference we can make with these kids and supporting their families, it's so powerful, okay, so powerful. Then I want to share what happened. Okay, so we moved to Plainview, Texas. That's where my dad got placed. Keep in mind, they're in Havana, Cuba, living the life, drinking VAT 60, whatever, and now they're in the freezing cold, and my dad gets placed in a little town called Plainview at Wayland Baptist College in the Panhandle, or in the Great Plains of Texas. So my dad teaches for a few years at Wayland, and then I'm trying to remember how old I was, 6, so probably age 58, suffers an aneurysm. He spent 3 months in the hospital and was partially paralyzed. His left side was paralyzed. Fortunately, his brain was intact. He was a very, very smart man. And he was able to go back to teaching. But there was one caveat. The college had no elevators. Again, the college had no elevators. And guess what? Professors had to use books. So there was no computer. You didn't do things digitally. So he lost his job because he couldn't carry his books up and down the stairs. Okay, think about that. That would not happen today. I have had the privilege of sitting with Senator Harkin and thanking him now for ADA. So when we're in the corporate world and we, complain about all the ADA things, and this is what it would be if we didn't have it. So my dad loses his job. Again, you can see here his left side is kind of drooping. And then this is one of the last pictures of my dad before he passed, and I just found that and thought, I've got to share it. So after he lost that job, it thrust us, again, he was almost a 60-year-old man at that point, could not find work, certainly not in Plainview, Texas, especially since it was a very racist little town. So we moved to Houston, land of opportunity. Again, older man, broken English, and we weren't citizens, by the way. We were legal, and whatever that means, I'm not sure it means anything, but we were legal aliens. So we moved to Houston, can't get a job. He certainly was capable of working, but no one would hire him. Okay, so fortunately, at that time, he was able to get, he finally was, again, lived on welfare. We lived off of, it was called food stamps, SNAP. If it weren't for those programs, I would not be standing here today. I was talking to, again, it's just, I don't know, some of the things that are still triggering for me. Food insecurity is very important to me. I still have issues, okay? I still hoard food as a result of that. And not that I ever went hungry. I remember my mom telling me, I said, well, we went to McDonald's, you know, and she goes, well, do you notice they didn't order anything? My parents didn't order. They just wanted me to have it. So anyway, a lot of things, right? So, you know, again, living with a disability and not being citizens before ADA, just a lot of obstacles and roadblocks that I felt like our country was moving forward and providing resources, and now we're at risk of, you know, again, putting this very vulnerable population at risk. So, why do I share all this with you? Okay, did I bore you? Okay, did anyone know that about me other than the couple of you? I don't look like that person, right? What the image is of, you know, a refugee. I didn't grow up with any country club, right? But a woman said to me that I had just met, we were talking, I said, I'm about to retire. She says, what are you going to do? I said, well, I want to really figure out my purpose and really get more involved with causes that I'm very passionate about. She goes, what are you passionate about? I said, immigration. She goes, oh, really, why? And I said, well, you know, I'm a refugee, blah, 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 blah. And she goes, oh. And I told her, I said, I've been here since I was 2, right? She goes, oh, do you like it here? What would you have said? What would you have wanted to say back? This woman that I have never met before, who I've been talking to for 2 hours, she knew I was an executive at Wells. She goes, oh, you're Cuban? And I said, yeah. And you know, she goes, I want to hear my story. And, you know, and then she goes, oh, that explains the job you have. Yeah, that was January of this year. Right. So, again, there's just a lot of crazy thinking going on out there. So, you know, I am grateful to have the experiences that I've had. I would not have wanted anything different. Not even the, again, food stamps, all of the, you know, support. I'm grateful. And my dad was so grateful in this country, so grateful. We became citizens when I was 14. I became a citizen under him. He had to go through the whole test. And I remember he was so excited about US history that he started teaching citizenship classes. And I'm just like, are you kidding? 14? I'm like, this stuff is all BS. And now I appreciate it. But at the time, it was like, oh, Dad, you're just, you know, whatever. But he was a learner. And he was so grateful. He would sit in the front pew at church, sing at the top of his lungs. You know, I mean, he was just so grateful, even though he had been on welfare. I mean, he'd been a wealthy man, and he was still grateful in this country. So that's a lesson that has really, you know, framed my story. And, you know, even before I knew this was my story, because you have to kind of reflect to think, okay, why do you act the way you do today, or what's made you that way? So it's taken me a long time. Thank you, Steve Carlson, for helping me frame a lot of this a few years ago. It always helps, so I'm very grateful for you. But, you know, as I think about, you know, and my dad, unfortunately, passed away when I was 19. And again, my mother didn't speak English. I remember he had a brain bleed, and I remember the surgeon coming in, or the neurosurgeon, and saying, well, you're going to have to make funeral arrangements. And I'm like, what? And I had to translate that for my mom. So I grew up really early, right? Even when I was 6, I was translating for my parents, which is also very common, you know, in our refugee, in our immigrant families, right? That the kids have to grow up pretty fast. So again, how does that translate into who I am today? So you just have all those little things, right? I'm not the privileged. I mean, we belong to Des Moines Golf. We belong to, you know, a country club in Florida. I'm like, how did this happen? I mean, it's just, and my husband didn't grow up this way either. So being grateful and not taking things for granted, you know, it's just so important. Started working at a bank at 16. I mean, it's been a crazy ride. So that's how I grew up. Okay. So now I stand before you today very daunting, sharing my legacy, which I really had to think about, and I've thought about it over the last few years as I've approached this thing called retirement. And it's really a next chapter for me, although I don't want to go back to work. I'm very grateful for all the opportunities that I had, but I don't necessarily. I want to do things that I really want to do right now, and not that I did. You all get it. So what are some of the lessons? Okay, and I'm going to share a little bit of the stories behind some of this and frame it up. So this is from my dad. I really learned this from my dad. So learn something each and every day. I don't care what it is. And with social media, but you still can learn, right? You still meet someone, you make a connection, you're constantly growing. My dad was such a firm believer in that. I have a vivid memory. Again, I lost him, so early in my life, but I still remember he was a book. I mean, he was a professor, right? So he used to read these thick books, and he always read in English. But when he would stop and come across a word that he did not know, again, what would you do? You just go past it and try to understand the context, right? Figure, oh, what did it mean? He would stop, ask Google. Right. Back then, there was something called a dictionary. Yeah, and he had a collection of dictionaries. Okay, so he would literally stop, and I remember his bookshelf. I still wish I had some of those books. But he would stop, get his dictionaries out, and he would write all the definitions out. And it's like he was logging that into his brain. When he'd come across a word, he'd highlight it that he didn't know. So he was, again, very astute. So that was, he always said, you've just got to learn. And you can learn from anything, okay, anything. And again, I would tell you, if you have that growth mindset and just always progressing and always trying to better yourself, again, it doesn't have to be for anyone else. You don't have to always, be on stage, but just what are you doing to learn something every day? Lesson number 1, learn from my dad. And this is one that I think I've done, but I don't know that I've ever articulated it to this degree. But I've seen a lot of leaders throughout my career that have to be perfect, and that want to always be, emulate their boss or emulate their leader, and that's good sometimes, but you got to be yourself. And I've also known some leaders throughout my career that always know the answer. You don't always know the answer. And better to, again, be humble and vulnerable. I have leaders that I've worked with over the years that don't ever share anything about their personal life. And again, that was very generational too, that, we don't share. Again, work is work, and, and again, maybe this thing called work-life balance and I call it more harmony. But again, it's important for people to see you as human. It's important for them to know what's under the layers and to know the why. And I know these words are used a lot, but do we really see it? But, so this last boss that I had, first, he was fairly new to my group, and this was after I had the regional job. This was the national job. In his first little town hall with our division, he comes on and he's talking about how humble he is. And everybody's, we're virtual, and everybody's like, oh my God, he's so good, he's so good, he's so approachable. And I'm like, do you not see red flags in that? Okay, who has ever been humble that talks about how humble they are? And I'll tell you what, that played out. So for my last 6 months there, boy, I saw him be the smartest guy in every room, and he needed to make sure everybody knew he was the smartest guy, and there were no imperfections, and again, not the thing you want to emulate, right? So even if you have a boss like that, you don't need to be that person. It was interesting because he was my 2-up boss, and my boss at the time was a young female, and she was trying to be just like him. And I could see it. I mean, I'm the old wise person, right? And I just wanted to shake her and say, you don't have to be like him. Okay, you don't have to be like him. But that's what she felt she had to do. So again, regardless of what's around you, you can lead the way that you know is right. You've heard me say this, Marcia, that sometimes as a leader, we have to be a funnel, to kind of synthesize information, and sometimes we have to be an umbrella and, protect people from, again, some of the way the messages you get, you have to figure out how to translate them into, what you know is right. you know, regardless of what the differences are, again, background, race, gender, experience, you know, don't build a fraternity or sorority. I've had colleagues, you probably know who I'm talking about, Marcia, who, you know, tried to build a team just like him. They all looked like him. They all acted like him. It's like, dude, you want to like bring other people in. You don't need everyone that looks and thinks just like you. It's more fun to do it this way and to build, you know, a team of, you know, a collaborative team of people from different backgrounds. And, you know, I know DEI right now, I'm on the Community Foundation, and, you know, we have to take the word diversity and equity out of, you know, again, some of the nonprofits. I just feel so awful for what we're having to go through right now. But at the end of the day, this is what makes it work, okay? This is what our country, this is what humanity is based on. So honor and embrace. So, invite in. I'm having a ball in Florida, other than those two instances, getting to know people that, you know, don't have a clue what I've done for a living. I mean, they're coming from all different backgrounds, and it's really been kind of fun to just really understand, you know, all the differences. But, you know, bring it in, invite it in. I feel like as I'm thinking about my legacy and my purpose, Pay It Forward is really what's kind of centering in my mind. So I feel like I've done some of that, but I could have done more. And we can always do more. And, you know, whether it's youth, adults that, you know, we're trying to, you know, figure out how to help, but I feel privileged, and having, again, had the resilience and I've survived and I've thrived. So I feel like it's time for me to pay it forward. And even though I've done some of it, I can do a lot more. And lift each other up. So I've seen that in the workplace. I was sharing this breakfast with Jan Freed. Some of you may know Jan this morning, and we were sharing old, you know, war stories of, you know, working in the 70s and 80s. And some of the worst bosses I've ever had were women. And how sad is that, right? How sad is that? And a lot of them were like that 10-year, like somewhere between a 5 and 10-year difference, you know, with me, older. And it's like, boy, I broke the glass ceiling, so therefore you're going to suffer. And you're going to have to go through all the pain that I did. I was known as what kind of a mama bear at work. I prefer to call it advocate. But as I got older, mama bear seemed to be kind of fitting. But I want to, again, bring people along and lift people up, okay? And that's so important. And again, understand not everybody starts at the same level. And again, that goes back to, you know, our differences and our backgrounds. Some people need a little bit of a different lift. One of my strengths finders strengths is, and it just slipped me. It's one where I have to, like, understand people, and like Christmas shopping, I can't just buy gift cards. I have to like know you and know exactly what, you know, you're gonna like. Individualization. Thank you. Oh, God, I've been out of the workforce for 2 months. But yeah, I love strengths finders. Yes, individualization. And I think that's really important to understand what people need to be lifted up. Okay, so pay it forward, but individualize it. Okay? All right, so, you know, I was thinking about this, and, you know, just advice and, you know, just things that I know I've told, like Laura Howe and some of the leaders in MITA, some of the leaders I've worked with over the years. And I wish someone had told me all of this. But, you know, the first thing is sleep on it, and I'm not a good sleep on it person. I'm a very high anxiety, catastrophic thinker, so I have those issues too. If you're late, I don't think you're late, I think you're dead. So I have very, again, I'm an anxious person. We used to call it worrying, now it's called anxiety. But I have learned, and it's a learned practice, that if I sleep on it, it's going to be better tomorrow. Just sleep on it, okay? Because I remember, again, so many times, Laura and I have talked about this in MITA, you just feel like you're gut punched, you know, sometimes at work. And tomorrow it's going to feel better. It's going to feel better if you sleep on it. The other piece for me is, you know, believe in yourself and surround yourself with people that lift you up. I got that award a few years ago, Steve, for confidence, the Girl Scouts, and I forget one of the awards the Girl Scouts did. And I remember thinking, confidence? I am like the least confident person ever. But yet I got this award for confidence. I'm like, whoa. So the reason I come across confident is because I have had people that support me and lift me up. And really, and again, several of you are in the room, but again, they don't have to be your boss, they're just people that you surround yourself with. And then I think the other thing that I've learned, especially over the last few years, being in a strategy role in a very large enterprise, is I saw a lot of maneuvering and posturing with power, right? We're seeing it in our country right now too. But be nice, and you don't have to use power to get things done. We need to be influencing. And power, at the end of the day, is not going to accomplish what we need to accomplish together. It's about influencing. So at work, again, I've watched people, again, my recent boss was like, well, now I own this, and you're getting, she would like bully other people that we collaborated with. I'm like, just stay out of it. I'll figure it out, and I will make it happen. Okay, let me take that on. Because you just, again, it's the whole do unto others, right? I mean, this is not rocket science. It always wins to just be nice. And the other piece is for me, and this is my mantra, it's going to be okay. It's just going to be okay. And I know that's overused, but it's going to be okay. There is more to all of this, and there's a bigger purpose, and it's going to be okay. And, I think back, this is where the resilience piece comes in for me, and I think about how if my parents had not had that kind of mindset, they wouldn't have survived all of that. And they went through a lot worse than what I've ever gone through. So, again, that motivates me to say, you know what, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And then my last one, I don't know where I heard this, but you've heard this a bazillion times. It's like, you know what, we don't have to feel up and positive and perky, and, we're not always perfect. So I can't remember where I heard this. I can't say that I'm the author, but I love this quote. It's okay to visit Pity City, just don't move there. Okay? It's okay to, have those moments. It's okay. Again, just don't stay in that space, but allow yourself time to be able to get through it. I think that may be it. Again, thank you for being here. I literally thought there would be like 4 people here. So.